Bojo, Kendra Lowden, and Desnikas. Hello, my name is Kendra Lowden. I'm the Foster Care Adoption Manager for Fire Lodge Children and Family Services. I will be speaking with you today about stress and trauma. Trauma has been front page news in recent years. We've likely all heard of post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, as it relates to those in military service. We've also heard about the impact natural disasters has on the mental health of both children and adults. We've all experienced trauma in one way or another at various times in our lives. This makes practicing self-care even more important as we explore the topic of trauma. So remember to take care of yourself as we learn more in this short presentation, and seek professional resources when necessary. Before diving into the definition of trauma, let's talk about stress. Stress is a feeling of emotional tension or tension in the body. It can come from any event or thought that makes you feel nervous, angry, or other similar feelings. Stress is your body's reaction to a trial or demand. In short bursts, stress can be positive, such as when it helps you avoid a dangerous situation or meet a deadline. It also includes things like having a flat tire, running late, or even plumbing issues in your home. All of these things can cause a person stress. While stress and trauma have some characteristics that are similar, there are also some noticeable differences. A traumatic event is different from ordinary stressful or hurtful events in several important ways. First, it threatens the life or physical integrity of a person or someone critically important to the person, such as a significant other, parent, grandparent, sibling, or child. Second, a person may feel as if his or her body is out of control. This may add feelings of helplessness, panic, and despair. For some people, they can experience intense terror or lack of power. Third, the body responds to this threat automatically. This shows through an increased heart rate, shaking, dizziness or faintness, rapid breathing, release of stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol, and even the loss of control of the bowel or bladder. The physical responses to trauma can be disturbing in and of themselves. Feeling that his or her body is out of control adds to a person's feelings of helplessness and panic. The danger may feel as if it's outside and inside all at once. You may hear someone impacted by a traumatic event say, "My heart was beating so hard I thought it would come out of my chest." Keep in mind that each person experiences stress and trauma to varying degrees. Now let's talk about the different types of trauma. While trauma can include multiple aspects, we will specifically learn about acute, chronic, and neglect. An acute trauma is a single event that lasts for a limited period of time. Examples of acute trauma include being in a car accident or seeing a loved one die. Certain moments during the event, like the sound of hospital machinery or the smell of a hospital room, can stick in a child's mind as the worst or most frightening moment. Children gauge the urgency of an event by parents' and other adults' responses. For example, a child may remember the scariest part of a tornado being her mother crying in fear. Chronic trauma is when a person experiences many traumatic events, often over a long period of time. Chronic trauma can mean recurrent traumatic events of the same kind, such as physical abuse or domestic violence, or the experience of numerous different traumatic events, such as a child who has seen a violent fight between her parents, later gets hurt in a drive-by shooting, and then has to spend weeks in the hospital undergoing upsetting medical procedures. Think about what happens to children displaced by hurricanes. In addition to the trauma of going through the hurricane and consequent flooding, children lose their homes, neighborhoods, friends, and their schools. They watch their parents suffer to make ends meet. The initial trauma of the hurricane is made much worse by the many terrible things that follow. The effects of chronic trauma build on each other. The brain and body of a person who experiences chronic trauma for years may respond differently to a scary event than a child who has not had as much exposure to trauma. And then neglect. This is another type of trauma and one of the most common reasons children are placed into foster care. Neglect is defined as the failure to provide for a child's basic needs. If you think of neglect as just the absence of something good, it may not seem very traumatic. But to a child who is dependent on adults for care, being left alone in a crib in a wet, dirty diaper, suffering from the pain of hunger, and exhausted from hours of crying, neglect feels like a threat to the child's survival. Neglect can also make children feel abandoned and insignificant and decrease their ability to recover from traumatic events. So the information that I used here was gathered from the Guiding Principles for Oklahoma Kinship, Foster, and Adoptive Families curriculum. If you or someone in your family is experiencing trauma or dealing with the after effects of a trauma, please contact a professional as soon as possible. Citizen Potawatomi Nation and many local agencies offer supportive and therapeutic services to community members in need. Miigwech.